Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap it up on Nigeria here. Remember, we're dealing with a very fractious, diverse country, lots of different ethnicities, issues of religion, issues of class, geography. It's all fractious. Okay, so how do you govern in a country like this? Well, first of all, it has a presidential system, which means legislative and executive branches are elected separately. It does have a judicial system that is nominated by the president and approved by the legislative branch. Presidents, you're not going to have to know everybody, but you might want to know some of them. So, the president is both head of state and head of government, which means the president runs the government and is the representative to uh, everybody else that's out there. Um, in terms of the rest of the world. It is the most powerful branch by far. 2 4-year terms, pretty simple. If you look, notice by the way, Umaru Yar'Adua came after Olusegun Obasanjo. He is Muslim and Fulani. Then it flips down to the south. Goodluck Jonathan was Christian and Ija. And then Muhammadu Buhari, the presidency flips north. He is Muslim and Fulani. And then the current president of Nigeria is Bola Tinubu. Goes back south now. He's Muslim, yes, but he is Yoruban. So that sense again of there's almost a feeling in Nigeria that it has to flip back and forth between north and south and the different tribes. That it's not required. There's no law about it, but it's kind of like an expectation over time that kind of keeps the country from being too unstable. Okay, the president, pretty standard. Again, runs the government and is the diplomatic head of the state. He signs and vetoes legislation. This one right here, though, his cabinet. This is something known as federal character. It's to make sure that you have kind of a unified influence, but then those opinions come from a diverse group of voices. So when you're in your cabinet, your informal advisors must come from all 36 states to try to get again voices that are working to the ear of the president. So and that is known as federal character, where your cabinet ministers have to come from all 36 states within Nigeria, again, trying to work with that diversity. Elections are first past the post, FPTP. That means the person that gets the most votes wins, not a majority, but the most votes. Fraud is insanely abundant. They are free and fair elections for the most part, but there is definitely issues of fraud in there. They do have another thing to deal with diversity, and that is that when you run a presidential election to win, you must get at least 25% of the vote from 2/3 of the states. And again, what this does is it makes sure that you're getting a diverse group of opinions, that you get, if you're president, you get a support of at least 2/3, like 25% in at least 2/3 of the states. So the last election where Bola Tinubu was elected, he's going to be here in blue. So not only did he get quite a bit of the southern parts of Nigeria, but he did get some Muslim states as well, and this put him over the top uh, overall. Now, the bureaucracy that is under Bola Tinubu, the people that actually put the law into effect, insanely corrupt. It's all done by patron clientelism. Basically, the number of government jobs has increased massively because when you do a favor for somebody, you're like, hey, I know how I can get you some easy money where you don't have to do a lot of work. I'm going to make this job as a part of government to make you go out there and build a highway when the reality is you don't do much. You pretty much skim everything that goes towards that highway funding. And so you have just massive amounts of primarily ethnic corruption that lines pockets of all kinds of bureaucrats. The military is seen as kind of a predator, and because if you go back to pre 1999, the military has always been the one to help engage in a coup and overthrow the ruler. The president has to basically consider the military almost like a fourth branch of government. You got to keep them calmed down because if the military feels like it, I mean, the president does control the military. The president is the commander in chief, but you got to be careful because the military feels like it, it's going to run over you. Okay. Legislative branch, pretty simple. It's very similar to the United States Congress. It is known as the National Assembly. It's where laws are made. It is bicameral, meaning it has two houses. And the National Assembly is made up of One, the Senate, and you don't need to know like how many people, just need to know that it's done by first past the post, which means the person with the most votes in each state is going to win. And there are 4-year terms in the Senate. Want to take a guess what the House is? The House of Representatives. Look, that's the lower house, also first past the post, meaning the most votes gets the wins, and they also serve 4-year terms. Very weak legislative branch, though. They also have a judicial branch that has a Supreme Court. It is an independent judiciary in theory, which means that, yeah, sure, the judicial branch can act independent of the influence of the president, but it's more of in theory. Pretty much, they can't do a ton to keep the president in check. There are two types of primary law in Nigeria. One is fundamentalist Islamic Sharia law, that is primarily in the north, and of course, the coded law, the written law that is all over Nigeria. The Constitution that helped create the president and the Supreme Court and the National Assembly was the Constitution of 1999. It is the most recent Constitution. There are political parties in Nigeria, the biggest of which and the one in power is the All Progressives Party. They are the largest party. They have the current majority in the governors, the Senate, and the House, and the current president, all part of the APC that used to be called the All Progressives Congress. More government regulation of the economy and a more centralized, stronger central government. You're going to notice most of the political parties in Nigeria are going to be socially what we would see in the United States as conservative. They would not be liberalism in Nigeria is very rare because it is such a religious culture. You have a lot of religious ideology that is much more conservative, especially around like homosexuals or LGBTQ populations, even women. You're going to see a much more socially, religiously conservative culture. The People's Democratic Party is the other primary party. It is more centrist, but it's also more free market, less centralized, more religious freedom. That states, you don't need a centralized economy. You allow states to do more things. And again, very socially conservative. This is the newest party in Nigeria and the one that was kind of like almost compared to Bernie Sanders in the 2016 election. It was known as the Labour Party. It's kind of a European style, socially democratic party, more like it would be modeled after maybe the Democratic Party, but it's probably even more left of center of the Democrats. That is Peter Obi. A lot of people thought he was going to win. He did not. He got a lot of votes in Lagos and areas of central Nigeria, but didn't really pull off the big wins. Also, a believer in social justice and government safety nets for the poorest Nigerians. But again, um, he'd be just like he would be in most parts of the world, very attractive to people that are young and passionate, but overall did not get enough votes. Okay. Um, when it comes to leadership and how do you recruit the elites to run businesses and government, it's all prebendalism, so it's all ethnic corruption. It's very similar to what goes on in China and Mexico, just it's more ethnicity than the party or the political affiliation in Mexico. It's all done usually with oil money. If you are part of the process of dealing with oil money, very little gets back down to the people. You connect with your ethnicity and religion first. And it's basically the idea of grants and congrats, baby. You give me your support, your congratulations. I get you the cash money and the grants. You help keep me in power. I let you wet your beak a little bit and stay in the game and get that money. Okay. Now, part of the way you do that is you actually create corporations to run entire industries. These are known as parastatals. A parastatal is a company that is privately owned in theory, but basically all the boards of directors on the company are appointed by the government, and the executives that run the company, like the CEO, chief executive officer, chief financial officer, are actually part of like the president's network of corruption, and and what the business does is it basically runs the primary industry of whatever we're talking about. In Nigeria, it's oil. It's the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. So basically, to get involved in oil at all in Nigeria, you have to go through the NNPC, and that parastatal, that industry and business makes sure that the connection to government is absolutely secure, that the money keeps flowing to the government, but it seems like it's a private entity. Mexico has a parastatal that you may have heard of, and the parastatal is known as Pemex. Basically, if you want to get into the oil game in Mexico, you have to go through Pemex, and Pemex is quote unquote kind of private, but its board, its chief executives are all put in there by the the party in power, in this case Morena in Mexico. All right. And oil, of course, is a massive issue in terms of prebendelism and corruption. So corruption's everywhere, and this is where we're going to kind of end. We will have another section on some issues within Nigeria, but corruption is all about that oil money, keep the elites in control, and of course, what you see in Nigeria is extreme wealth and also extreme poverty, and of course, more people are connected to that poverty because they don't have that direct access to the oil wealth.